Okay, so picking up right where we left off, at the end of the last video, I said that we were going to create the coroutine that tracks how many resources you have, and we're going to create a cost for each unit. So as far as how we do the first part, we're going to go to our GameFlow script, and we create a new static integer to keep track of the amount of resources you have. So public static. And again, it has to be static because we need multiple objects in multiple scenes to be able to access this variable. And we'll call it total res, and we'll set it 0. Again, we're using an integer because we're not using fractions, and you can call this whatever you want. Maybe it's money, maybe it's silver, maybe you're playing a futuristic game and you want it to be some kind of element. Doesn't matter, it's really just a number. Okay, so we're going to add the coroutine, so IEnumerator, and we'll call this generate res. So yield return new, wait 4 seconds, and we'll do 1 second. Again, this is a game balance issue, so you can set it to whatever amount you want. Just know that this is measured in seconds. You can use fractions. You just have to follow it with the letter F. So you want it to happen, say, every half a second. You would do that. So wait 1 second, and then total res is incremented by a certain amount. So plus equals, say, 1. And again, game balance, sorry if I keep saying that. I just want to make it clear that certain things are not absolute. It's up for whatever works in your particular application. And then we want this to start all over again. So we're going to do start coroutine, generate res. And so now it is pointing back at itself. And we'll take that and we'll put that in the start section. So when the scene is instantiated and the GM object is created, as soon as it's created, it will come down here. It waits 1 second. This is increased by 1. And then this points back here. So now you have an infinite loop here. Now, this in itself is a good start, but we haven't actually started making any decisions based upon it yet. So right now it's just really a counter. And let's actually start displaying that number. So total RS. Now you could say, how come I didn't have to declare what script this is in like I did before? Because anytime that I referred to this, I had to refer to the GameFlow script. It's because we're in the GameFlow script. So technically you could do GameFlow.totalRes, but since you're in GameFlow, it's fine. So let's do that, and also let's start doing something else. We're going to start remarking out the castle HP. That way we don't have different numbers that mean different things. I personally am satisfied that the damage is working as intended, but rather than totally deleting them, we can just remark them out like this and come back to them. Thought we had another one there. Okay, that one's already there. So as far as which ones did I make changes to, see how there's a asterisk? It's small, but that tells you that this has not been saved. See, asterisk went away. So it's nice that they do that, but honestly, it's not very salient. It doesn't really stand out. Anyways, so the main thing that we've done so far is we've added this coroutine. So now what's going to happen is in the bottom, in the console here, we'll now see that number counting it. So if we run this, 1, 2, 3, there we go. Okay, so now we need a cost associated with each one of these. So basically, we're going to use an if statement. It's going to say if the total res is equal to or greater than whatever number we choose for this, then it gets created. So in other words, we're going to add a condition. So let's go to the melee button script. So this simply says on mouse down, so there's no condition. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to add a condition. So if, and now here we do indeed have to declare game flow dot total res is greater than 4. So we're going to say that it costs 5. So if it's greater than 4, then you instantiate it. Okay, so we've added a condition, but we want that amount to now be reduced from the variable. So gameflow.total res minus equals 5. So in other words, since we're doing integers, this would have to be a 5, and then this reduces 5 from it. And then what we can do is this, debug.log gameflow. Okay, so now this only is working for the melee button. So let's give this a run. So if I click on the melee, shouldn't spawn. Shouldn't spawn. Now it should spawn. And you could see it was reduced. So just like that, you've added a auto-generating of a resource, and now there's an expense. So spamming it, clicking, nothing's happening. Spamming it really fast, still only generated 1. Then we got another. So working as intended, just like that. I don't know if I'll do it in this series. It all depends how interested you guys are. But see how this is a constant? You could turn that into a variable. In other words, say there's a skill tree. And the skill tree, one of the perks is reduces the cost of all cards by 1 point. So what you do is rather than comparing this to a 4, you'd compare it to another variable, and that variable would be reduced if you bought that skill, that kind of thing. So now it's really just kind of rinse and repeat. So we take this. Actually, we can't quite do it that way. We'll just type it manually. So we need to go to the Archer button, and we'll do the same thing. We'll say if gameflow dot total res is greater than 2, so say it's 3, then this happens. And again, we need to subtract the spent amount. So gameflow dot total res minus equals 3. And we can do the debug.log gameflow.totalres. Okay. So we save that. So spamming him, nothing happens. Now we can make one, make another. Spamming him, nothing happens. There we go. Made the soldier. Okay, actually, I'm kind of glad that happened. We never had them in front of each other. I'm thinking that a collision is occurring that should not happen. So, a teachable moment. Let's see. The arrow is not a trigger. So let's turn the arrow into a trigger. The archer is a trigger. The soldier melee is not a trigger. Now, this should not affect the functionality because we were checking for triggers right along. Because both objects don't have to be a trigger, only one of them had to be a trigger to work. And that was this. This was the trigger. So I'm glad we did that because you never know when interactions create a problem. So let's see if we can. Although let's also, I think we did it in a different order though. I think we had the archer first. Is it? I remember the soldier kind of like ran through him. It looked like he tripped because he was probably hitting an arrow at the same time. Okay, so just like that, we cleared up that little glitch. It was an oversight. I shouldn't call it a glitch. It was absolutely human error, specifically my error, and that I hadn't set everything to a trigger. Okay, so now we have that. What we can do is, since the console isn't available to the player, we need to make an additional indicator. So we can, for now, it'll just be a text field. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go ahead and go up to Game Object, 3D Object, and we'll go to 3D Text. Some have pointed out, they say that 3D Text really is deprecated, but it's still available in the menus. So for now, we'll use it. And again, this is kind of the functionality test, just the kind of placeholder functionality. You may find that you actually want to put a meter up here, that kind of thing. And what you can always do is you can put, just as like MMOs and games like that, have like an overlay that's like gray and that it, in a radial manner, it like spirals off. And so it lets you know that it's charged. You could do something like that. So rather than actually stating how much you have, you could have an overlay that lets you know whether or not that is available to you. So we'll make character size 0.2, make the font like 24. You can put it top center if you want, over to the right, wherever. Again, this is kind of just placeholder functionality. And so what's going to happen is, now that we have this, let's get rid of the text. And we're going to make the GM object aware of this text object. So in our game flow script, public game object total, got to be careful, I don't want to reuse that. Let's call that resource text. Let's save that. Come back here. We'll click on our GM object, and there's the new resource text. We just take this, put it there, come back to the script, and now we're going to make a modification to it. And that is in the update section. Resource text dot got to remember the name of the actual component. It's text mesh. Text mesh. Basically what this does, so first of all, we're saying what object we want to make a modification to. So we're making a modification to that. We're saying which component we want to make the change to. So it's the text mesh. And then we're saying take this value, turn it to a string, and then dump it into the text attribute, which again is this here. So we should save that. And I think that should do it. Yep. So 3, 3, 4, 4. Okay, so 2 down, 1 to go. We'll add a cost for this. So we will go to the catapult con and oops, sorry, my apologies, the button. The catapult button. And again, right now, on mouse down, there is no condition. So we're going to create a condition. So if game flow, whoops, dot total resource is greater than 9, then this happens. And then we will then say game flow dot total resource minus equals 10. Now, what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to put the debug line like I did for the other ones, because now we actually have it clearly displayed right on the screen. So in fact, we can clean up the other ones now by going to, that was in the melee button. You can either remark it out or you can just straight up delete it because now we have an alternative. So that's the melee button. That is the archer button. And we already did not put it into the catapult. Let's run it. So rapidly clicking, doing nothing. There we go. Okay, so I think that's about it for this lesson because that was really all I wanted to deal with. I wanted to add the generating of the resource, add a cost to the individual objects, have that cost be subtracted from the total amount of resources. So I think in the next video, we will either clean this up again, like add some cards up here rather than just reusing these assets, actually create like a new image up here. And that way we can have some standardized size and we can do the overlays that I mentioned. So we'll either do that or we'll start spawning the enemy troops. I kind of want to do the enemy troops because this is more fine tuning, whereas this is actually key functionality. And we want to make sure we can get that to work. And that's also going to take a little bit longer because, as I mentioned, at that point we have to start substantially modifying functionality. We just modified a little functionality now because at first we could just click on this and generate the unit. Now there's a check for resource. So we've already kind of dipped our toe into those waters of modifying and building on something that we already did. This will be more substantial because right now these units are just checking for collision with this. These units would now have to check for either collision or proximity because since this is a ranged unit, he really should start shooting at the attacking unit even before it reaches them. He should be attacking before they get into melee range because that's the whole point. And this one we might not have to change because we could say that this one only attacks buildings, which is legit. That there's definitely that kind of control in games. Again, referencing Minion Masters, there's certain units that will only attack structures. But him will definitely have to come up with a new functionality as far as detecting not just proximity to this, but proximity to an attacking soldier. So I think that's what we'll do in the next video. We'll start spawning enemies. And then we'll go from there. As always, if there are any questions, any functionality that you'd like to see, please just leave a comment and say, can you do this? But once we do that, once we add the enemy soldiers, really you've got like 95% of the game. At that point, it's just swapping in your own graphics, coming up with more units. I've already demonstrated how to do a melee and a ranged unit. That's how most units are going to be. Maybe you could come up with like a flying unit. So maybe we could look at that in a later video, but now you're getting more specific as opposed to general functionality. So okay, so we still have a lot to go through in the subsequent videos. So again, I hope this has been helpful, and please enjoy the rest of your day.